Hello and welcome to episode 310 of the Stacey West podcast. And for the first time since I've been doing fun little numbers things at the beginning of the podcast, we do have a player that made 310 appearances for Lincoln City. His name was Harry Troops. It'd be very important to look him up. We should never forget the players that played 60, 70, 80 years ago that made this football club what it was. My name is Gary Hutchinson. I am one of your regular hosts. And with me, eventually today, is Chris Lamming. How are we doing, sir?
Well, as you mentioned a minute ago, I'm on the naughty step right now, so I'm not very good. I feel very guilty. Sorry for starting 5 minutes late, everybody.
I wouldn't call it the naughty step. It does kind of rather amusingly tie into something else that we've got planned in a little while. So our first podcast of the season together, which is very, very exciting. Charlie and Ben did it on Sunday, which I'm sure nobody listened to. So this is the first proper one of the year. Sorry, I joke, of course people listen to it. Charlie's mum listens to it. At the moment, my wife is calling me, so I'm just going to answer the phone and then keep talking on the podcast so she realizes that I'm recording, and we'll hang up the phone really quickly. So how you doing, mate? We had a good weekend, didn't we?
We had an absolutely fantastic weekend. Obviously gutted to miss the game. For those of you that weren't aware, Gaz and I were at a festival this weekend. We kind of got the dates a little bit muddled when we were booking the festival, thinking it was the weekend before the first game of the season. Obviously paid up months ago. It was all booked in. We weren't missing it. We were kind of pleased it wasn't a home game initially, but we were just glued to the score for the 90 minutes that the game was on. But it was a fantastic weekend with good people.
Yeah, it was a nice moment actually when Porty got the winner, because I think it was halfway through a headsticks set, and they may just have been coming to the end of their set. And I remember it completely set me off like a firework for the final two bands, which were Millie Manders and the Shut Up and Merry Hell. And I kind of wished it had been I wish it had been a 3 o'clock kickoff, so that we could have gone off like a firework at 5 and had much longer, because the best moment of the weekend for me was those two final bands. It was really, really good. Now, obviously, it was a good weekend for us, but it would have been a nervy weekend for many people up and down the country, because today was A-level results day. Now, A-level results day apparently is something that causes nerves and stress. Neither Chris nor me would know, because neither Chris nor me got through our A-levels. I think you did you even start yours?
I didn't even start them. No, I didn't do them. I went to college, did a B-Tech, which I wasted for 2 years. I just wanted to play football every day at college, really. That's the only reason I went. And then I got a real job after that.
Very good. Well, I binned mine off, so I did 6 months of A-levels. And I remember doing mock exams. It was in like the January time. I was doing English literature, and those are people that have read my book will know I had a little bit of a clash with an English teacher who was a twat to me. And it was because her son had been in our class, and he was ginger and I was ginger, but he got picked on for being ginger, and I kind of joined in on that, and it was very bad. And I think I've apologized to him in the years since. Obviously, she didn't particularly like me for that, which I can understand. So we had a big fallout, and I was just doing this mock exam, and I hadn't done any revision or anything for it. And I just remember sitting there thinking, nah, this isn't for me. And I just stopped going to her lessons after that, stopped doing the exams. So I came out of it. But we both feel that we are capable of certain A-levels. So I've been listening to Absolute Radio this afternoon, and they've been doing a feature. What A-levels would you have, or what life A-levels would you have if you were to get them today? Now, I've picked 2. And I think you've picked 2 as well, haven't you? Now, one of yours, the one that we've already tested you on, you've already got an A star on. So what's that?
I've got a skill which is pointless, but I like it. Pretty much I reckon with every single EFL stadium, if you were to show me a picture of it inside, outside the stadium, of just a small section of it, that just a little something that gives it away, I reckon I could guess exactly where it is.
Now,
and as you mentioned, this was tested, wasn't it?
So this was tested in Gwyn's because I called Billy bullshit on it. I thought, no, not a chance. So I cropped a tiny little bit of Preston North End's stand, and Chris spotted that within seconds and explained why. So I picked a generic red seated area and literally just had a little bit of seat, a tiny bit of the grass, and one little railing. I think it was Bristol City. It could have been any red stadium at all, and you nailed it. So I'm going to give you an A star in that one.
Thank you very much.
What is your second A-level, Chris?
It's kind of similar. Flags, like national flags. I don't know why I have a knowledge of flags. I haven't sat down to try and learn them at any point. I'm just really good at them. There was an app ages ago, maybe 3, 4, 5 years ago, something like that. It was a very simple game. It was just guess the flag. And there's a picture of the flag. And there was a bit like Wordle in a way, in that you got a guess just with a flag, and if you didn't get it right, then you got a clue, then another clue, then another clue. There's every single flag in the whole world, even places like the Dominican Republic, the US Virgin Islands, etc. And I completed it.
Brilliant.
So 2 pointless skills.
So you're telling me that you think you would get an A star in flags if you were tested?
Yes.
Aren't you? So with the 22 people watching right now, and it's not going to be great to listen to, but I've actually selected 3 flags.
Oh, no! You didn't tell me about this.
No, I didn't, because you're not going to be able to grade my A-levels because mine are very different, but I want to be able to give you a grade. So I've got 3 flags for you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop them up. I'm going to very quickly describe them so that those listening in at home can kind of play along. Are you ready to go on your 3 flags? If you get one of them, I'll give you a C. If you get 2 of them, I'll give you a B. And if you get 3 of them, I'll give you an A. If you get none of them, it's a D. Happy?
Well, not really, but let's go for it.
Flag number 1. So it's got blue upper, red lower with a motif in the middle. Chris?
I think it's Liechtenstein.
You're not going to get top marks. That's Haiti.
Oh, they're so similar.
But that's not an excuse.
No, I'm just saying they are very similar though.
That was the easy one.
Was it? Oh shit! Oh, I'm gonna get a 0 here.
The next one for everybody watching at home. It's blue on top, white in the middle, green on the bottom, with a moon and some stars.
That's Azerbaijan.
It's actually
no, it's not. It's Uzbekistan.
I'm going to give you it. I'm going to give you it because you started saying no, it's not before I said the answer. So I'm going to give you that one. The final one's got to be dead easy. I'm going to describe it to you without putting it on the screen and see if you know it. And then I'll put it on the screen afterwards. Don't worry. So it's kind of got a sash down the middle. It's yellow in the top, red in the bottom, with what looks like a dragon design. And it looks like this.
Oh, Bhutan.
It is Bhutan. It is Bhutan. So you have got a B in your A level. And I think an A and a B is fairly good going. And I think we both get A's in Lincoln City anyway.
I think it's a B plus, but just because of how similar Liechtenstein and Haiti's flags are.
Yeah, I'm the invigilator and I'm not having that. So
okay, fair enough. I'm quite pleased I got a B in the end after starting poorly.
Now, nobody, unfortunately, can grade my A levels. I was thinking, what is it that I'm really skilled at? One of them is supermarket shopping. I'm giving myself an A in supermarket shopping because I have a set route around my local Morrison's. I know exactly the things I buy. I never get distracted by anything else that's on the shelf. But the real skill comes in the packing. So when it comes to the conveyor belt, I have an exact method of where I put things on the conveyor belt. So I put heavy bottles, liquids, and at the very front. Then I put cardboard things like boxes of dog food, etc., etc. And then it's the lighter stuff to the back, with eventually finishing with things like the bread. Because then I put it straight in the trolley. I don't pack there. So all the heavy stuff's on the bottom, and then basically the lighter stuff moves towards the front of the trolley, and then I bag it up at the car. It's very, very precise, and it's never let me down. I know you can't grade that, but I certainly think for being anal, I think I've got to have an A for that. And the other thing, and you can vouch for this due to an unfortunate situation on Tuesday night, is I could have an A level in never, ever, ever being late. I don't do late. If I tell you I'm going to be at yours at 4:30, I might be there at 4:10. I might be there 20 minutes early, but I will never be there at 4:31.
No, and I got slightly caught out on Tuesday night through this because Gary arrived 10 minutes early or so, and I leant out the bedroom window because I just had a shower.
Yep.
I had no clothes on.
Yep.
I had to let him in. So yes, that's very interesting. I have to say both of yours are more useful than mine.
Well, it depends. I mean, there could be some sort of bizarre kidnap situation where you have to name flags and stadiums. I can guarantee now at some point on Saturday at the game, somebody's going to come up to you with clipped images of football stadiums and test you. So it's going to be a massive test for you.
I like this game.
Yep. And we're talking of massive tests. Some of our reserve players had massive tests on Tuesday night. Wow. Because we are a Lincoln City podcast and we are going to talk about Lincoln City. And one or two of them probably didn't pass it and one or two of them did. So we're going to talk about Lincoln City going out of the League Cup against Harrogate Town. We will now have to wait at least 20 years for a home win in the League Cup, which is really unfortunate, of course. So you and I went to the game. We never normally sit together at games. We watch it on home on television, but we very rarely sit together at games. I thought it was an interesting watch. Now, I've had the stats up. I've gone over the Y Scout stats, and I know that there will be the eye test people who are going, it was crap. And what the eye test usually is looking at the result and seeing whether we've won or not. That's really what the eye test is, 9 times out of 10. I know Jack, who's bound to be listening, and Andy will probably disagree with me, but for me, that's the eye test. The stats test actually says that we were the better team, certainly in the first half. XG said it should have been us that won 2-1, not them. We played more forward passes, more deep completed crosses, more touches in the penalty area, more penalty area entries, more average passes per possession, fewer percentage of long passes, which will really surprise people than Harrogate. We only had 18% of our passes were long, whereas Harrogate's were 24%. So we came away pretty unhappy, but on overall, it was a game that really we should have won.
We should have won, particularly on the first half performance. I dug a little bit deeper into the stats and kind of broke it down. So what you've gone through there is some interesting stats over the whole 90, which do show over the 90 minutes we probably should have won the game. First half, we were utterly dominant. So our XG was basically 0.9 something, and theirs was 0.1. So we should have been 1-0 up at half time with the chances that were created. Harrogate only had one shot in the first half. We had 70% possession. We had 21 attacks, 7 leading in shots. Harrogate only had 5 attacks in the whole half, only one of those from leading to a shot. We dominated the first half, and it certainly felt like at half time it was only a matter of time until we went a goal ahead. We were maybe wasteful at times and got some good opportunities, got in good area, had some good territory, just didn't quite make our chances count. But Harrogate went 2-0 up in a half an hour period from the start of the second half to 75 minutes. So that kind of block of time, we were poor, genuinely poor. It was a huge contrast to the first half. The last 15 minutes, once we were 2-0 down, we did improve again. We were quite dominant in that last 15 minutes, but we were chasing the game. Harrogate were playing even deeper to try and keep us out. There's this game state going on there, which influences the stats. For me, the big contrast is the first half compared to the first half an hour of the second half. So bearing in mind how dominant we were in that first half, in that 30-minute spell from the second half kicking off until going around 2-0 down, we didn't have a shot on target, only had 2 shots overall. Harrogate actually had more possession than us. They had 10% more than we did. They had more touches in the box than us. We only had 3 touches in the box in a half an hour period. Bearing in mind, we'd had something like 18 touches in the box in the first half. And our XG in that time was just 0.23. Harrogate's was 0.79. They deserved to score at least 1. They scored 2. They deserved to score 1. In that half an hour period, from half time until 75 minutes, Harrogate were by far the better team. We hugely dropped off our performance levels. Now, we're going to talk, I'm sure, about why that might have been, but there's no denying that was poor. But also, we don't want to let that to cloud the overall performance, because the first half was actually genuinely good.
I was going to say, let's deal with this chronologically. So let's go back to the first half, because there was a few things that really impressed both of us. And the first thing I really want to pick up on is a little triangle of players that I thought looked like they were linking up really well, particularly when at least one of them was playing out of position. And that was on the left-hand side, Dom Jeffries, Freddie Draper, and Jack Moylan, who I thought were playing some lovely, neat football between themselves. I've seen some criticism of all of them. I've seen some criticism of all the players on and off, even players I thought did particularly well. So obviously, there was a lot to perceive there. But I thought Fred looked strong. I thought that he once or twice stood his ground against a big defender. He gave one a nudge and a free kick, and you and I disagreed as to whether it was a free kick. I thought it was. You said it wasn't. But whatever he did, it wasn't a big run reducer of old, but it was just I'm here and you're having this. I thought Dom Jeffries, he did fade a little bit through the game, perhaps not in his natural position, but that little trio looked really good for a while. On the other side of the field, however good we were, that wasn't evident between Rob Street, Jay Ben, and JJ McKiernan. And I thought at times JJ McKiernan was having to go a little bit rogue on his own, perhaps because he didn't. And they're all new faces, and one may well go and the other may well not play as much. So but I think if we'd had that dynamic on both sides, and the centre forwards had maybe been 10 yards closer to each other, I think we'd be talking about as being 3-0 up at half time.
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't see a huge amount wrong in the first half at all. Like I said, I felt like it was a matter of time. We're going to pinpoint some of the things that went wrong in the second half, and I think a couple of things you mentioned there were definitely highlighted in the second half. I actually think for the whole 90, there's only one player that played 90 that actually came out with a genuinely good performance, and that was Jack Moylan. I thought he was really good for the whole game, even in those difficult moments in the second half. What really impressed me, particularly in the first half, was when we had possession of the ball, but he wasn't on the ball. The positions he was taking up were really smart. He found himself in some really clever little pockets to receive the ball on the half turn, and he was always really positive once he received the ball. I was really impressed with his positioning and that off the ball stuff. I think that's something he's definitely improved on over the summer, because I would say Jack Moylan on the ball was pretty impressive last season, but it was his off ball side of his game that maybe needed a bit of work. Now, out of possession, I think there's still a little bit of work there, but certainly when we had the ball, he found up some really clever little pockets, which got us up the pitch at times, and it got us into dangerous areas. So yeah, I think Jack Moylan played well for the whole 90, and I'll agree with you. There was definitely some positive flashes in the first half.
I think Fred, because he played the whole 90 as well, he played 97 minutes. I think he was a little bit unfortunate, because I think things broke down a bit in the second half. I'm going to talk about the gaps and everything. And then that isolates him, because when you're a guy that's holding up, flicking on, laying off, and you can't do that because there's nobody there to do it to, you end up playing the game in the wrong areas of the field, or you're not receiving the ball in the right areas. I've seen quite a bit of criticism of Fred, or heard a little bit of criticism. Everyone's entitled to an opinion, but I genuinely believe that he had a decent game. And we talk a bit about Jovan, but for me now, I look at Freddie coming on, I look at Jovan coming on. I don't see former youth players coming on, and that's actually a really hard transition, I think, for a young player to make. And when I think back to quite a few of the other young players that we've had, I remember Lee Frecklington kind of becoming a senior player, and Sean Rowan has done it. Up until last season, Fred and Jovan weren't. Jovan was still very much fourth choice. Fred was still very much, he's going out on loan, he's got to develop. But I saw a maturity to Fred's game. It didn't bring goals on Tuesday. But even when things weren't going his way, he was still fighting, he was still scrapping, he was still putting himself about. And when Ben House came on, and again, I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, but when Ben House came on, I think it just knitted everything together a little bit, even though he was playing a little bit deeper because of a more intelligent footballer at the side of him. No disrespect to Rob Street. It's his second game with us. There's a long way to go in terms of developing what Michael Skubala wants him to do. But he did look quite wayward, I think, at times, even potentially in the first half.
Yeah, maybe. I think of the two, Fred certainly stood out kind of positively. It became a battle, I think, in the second half for both of them. So neither of them had a lot of kind of settled possession on the ball. Neither of them really had a huge amount of service to feet in the end. So, I think from a centre forward's perspective, and Rob definitely comes into this, it's really difficult to make an impression when all you're doing mainly is fighting and chasing, without ever really having a clear opportunity on goal or to really have any clear link up. So you mentioned that there was more link up from Fred, particularly in the first half in that little triangle. I think that's definitely the case. I think there are certain circumstances which maybe mitigate that for Rob a little bit. Partly it'd be him, of course. Everyone has a role to play, but I think the second half maybe exacerbated that a little bit. Is there anything else on the first half?
Let's move on to that. Let's move on to the second half, because the first half was decent. The big chance obviously was missed right at the death, which was from a Tom Hamer long throw, which was fantastic. But again, picking up on the Tom Hamer long throw, I think that often broke up the pace of the game, because we were waiting for him to run from left to right to take a throw in, and sometimes we lost that momentum, which I think Jimmy Walker also picked up on the radio. But there was the long throw, which Fred somehow, it's awkward, he scooped it over from kind of 2 yards. You watch it back and you can see how he's missed it. So we made the changes at halftime. Ethan Arahan and Pordy coming off, which you and I both agreed was kind of an indication of how important this game was to Michael Skubala. We wanted to win it, but when you're protecting players an hour and a half or 2.5 hours into the new season, you know that it's not a massive priority. So it was very much like an EFL trophy game. But that change just disrupted everything, really, didn't it?
It really did, yeah. We lost a lot. And it wasn't just individuals, obviously set a precedent, I think. Arahan and O'Connor, of course, are senior players, really, really important players for us, and I would say both leaders in their position. Bringing Jacko on for Pordy shouldn't have had a huge impact. I think Tom Blairless in possession was fine on the ball, but obviously it's very different, him playing there compared to Ethan Arahan. Now, I'm going to be maybe a little bit controversial here, and I don't want this to come across too negatively, but I just wonder whether we were maybe a little bit misled from the friendly. Maybe had a little bit of overconfidence, possibly because of how convincingly we beat them. Good first half. Okay, we can make a couple of changes here, protect some legs. We're bringing in 2 senior players on again. That was all we really did, 2 senior players, and it's just a matter of time. We'll still have enough to get through the game. Is that complacency? Is that just showing that actually it's just not as important as the league, and nowhere near as important as Saturday? So we don't really mind either way. We want to win, but we're not that bothered. I don't know which way around it is, because Michael seemed quite frustrated that we'd lost the game after at full time, which is good to see, obviously. But I just wonder whether there was a little bit of complacency sneaking in, whether that was intended. I'm not saying that's in from the management, but from the players' perspective, if you're thinking, okay, the skipper and arguably our most important player are getting subbed off at half time, does that just put something in the back of your mind in terms of going through the motions? And there was obviously some players out there that were looking to make an impression. And I got the feeling that some of those players were a little bit afraid to make a mistake in the second half rather than make the right decision. One thing that we mentioned quite a lot, and I've seen a lot of feedback, and I kind of agree with this, is that we just went far too long, too often, too soon. I've got no issue with a long ball. If it's a long pass, it's in the right area that's there to gain an advantage and the space to lock it into. But we did it far too soon, far too regularly. And certainly when you're the player knocking that ball, it's the easy decision to make. It's the risk-averse decision to make, because you haven't made a glaring mistake if you knock the ball 40 yards up the pitch, even if it's the wrong decision and it actually does cause a counter-attack or anything. It's not the wrong decision for you in the moment in terms of what the public see. For me, it's the safe decision, and I just think we did it far too often. Now, one thing you mentioned about the first half that was massively the issue in the second was wing-backs and forwards positioning. Now, when you go long early, wing-backs are our only players that are giving us width. So they're either in build-up, they're going to be deeper, but we also want them to be on the top line as our kind of highest, widest players when we're attacking. Now, they can't be in both places at the same time. And if you're knocking a long pass, then you're asking a hell of a lot for wing-backs on both sides to get all the way up the pitch to support that, and then also all the way back if it gets broken down, particularly if it's a contested ball. And I think we got caught on the counter a few times in the second half. And partly is it wing-back positioning, maybe not being fully aware of the game situation. But actually, partly I think they were sold down a little bit of the river a little bit, because you can't be expected to get up and down and be in the right place for a full 45 minutes. That's why you want to try and have a bit of possession and slightly slower build up at times, debate them onto you, or at least create some space, and get us up the pitch before you can then get up the pitch. And I think because of that, sometimes our wing backs were deeper, which caused our centre forwards to then be too wide. They were miles apart from each other at times. And then you're almost playing like a front two against a back four, and then you get in, or even a back five at times for them, and then you just get hugely outnumbered, and you can't expect us to break through. And then it became really disjointed from that point.
Yeah, I have to agree. I don't like to be critical of individuals, and I know I've kind of done that a little bit with Rob Street, and yeah, I know it was pretty harsh. I thought that J-Ben probably struggled a little bit, given that it's more of his natural position, whereas at least with Dom Jeffries, he tends to play wide left rather than wing back. But again, I think that he definitely faded. Look, the 2 goals are bad goals, having watched them back. The first one, we've let a lad who has come through the Burton ranks and has only played about 5 senior games cut through us like he's heated up a knife and gone through a big old slab of butter. And that's some tracking back. Again, I won't name names. Anyone wants to watch it back, have a look. Player tracks back and then just stops when he doesn't get there. And we've let a cross go in relatively easily, which is a really senior player's done that. And then again, and it's a little bit like one of the goals at Burton where you've got a player running in between the wing back and the centre half, and it just all is a little bit weak. And then the second goal, we saw it against Arsenal under 21s. That kind of failure to deal with a ball kind of over the top into that area. In that instance, it was a bad goalkeeper decision. In this instance, not entirely sure what Dom's trying to do. It's an awkward bounce. I get that. Just put your foot through it. And he looks like he's tried to head it back across to his fellow centre half because the keeper's come direct for him. So as soon as he's headed it across, he's left his keeper stranded in no man's land. I actually thought Zach Geacock had a half decent game. He needs game time. He needs to get out there. But again, I don't want to be too critical of Dom because actually I don't think he had a terrible game. I think he's playing out of position, which we know is, it could be an issue on that left side because Rico's some way away. Michael's already admitted that. Dylan Duffy's not really a wing back, and he's also got that hanging over his head, the gambling thing. So we're going to talk hopefully about somebody we think might be coming in at some point in the future, which we'll keep our fingers crossed for that. But I think it just highlighted the fact that we do still need that. You and I walking away said we learned nothing from the game, and actually on reflection, you do learn quite a bit. We learn at the moment that they need to do a little bit of work, I think, on the defensive organisation. Although, if a Sean Rowan had been at that point out there on the left, maybe it wouldn't have happened. A more kind of steady hand.
Yes, I think that's probably the big talking point. We haven't actually mentioned it yet. Is that we made 8 changes to the team that started the game against Burton, and 2 of those players came up at half time. 2 of the players that were remaining came up at half time in Pordy and Ethan. So it was a hugely rotated squad. It was almost like, if you're assuming that the team that played Burton is near enough our starting 11, or at least current version of, then this is almost like a reserve team for us. And yeah, you're right. We came away from the game not paid off, just a bit disappointed and thinking, no, what's a shame. We've signed a squad, at least on paper, that means we can fight on all fronts, and we're out of the League Cup in the first round. But actually, a few things did kind of on reflection highlight themselves. I agree with you. Number one, actually, despite the positive recruitment we've made so far this summer, we're not quite there yet. There is a couple of areas that we need to improve in. I would love to see some left-sided centre half cover. I quite like Tom Hamer. I think he'll sit in the right centre back, and we'll have a good battle there for a starting role. But I just think a natural left foot on that side really helps. Be difficult to bring someone in that's happy to play second fiddle to Sean Rowan. So I'm not sure whether we're going to be able to do that. I think wing back definitely needs some support, certainly, probably on both sides. I think Dom Jeffries would definitely be more suited to playing as a right wing back than a left wing back, if I'm in all honesty. I don't think that was his natural position. It's as much as he's played a left wing last season at times, as well as centre midfield. Playing left wing in a midfield 4 or front 3 is a very, very different role than playing a left wing back. Similar attributes required in regards to the energy levels, but in terms of the role in and out of possession, it's very different. I think he's more suited to a right wing back role. But yeah, they're the 2 things that came up for me from a negative point of view, is that from a recruitment point of view, we still need a little bit more. But actually, there was a couple of positives. I thought Jack Morgan, as mentioned, was good for the whole game. I thought JJ McKinnon was positive in flashes. Again, I don't think he had quite the chemistry with the two players on his side of the pitch as Jack did on his. So I think he actually did really well to shine as much as he did. And I thought just Jovan coming on and making the impact he made, it was like we brought one of the big guns on. He brought Ben House on at the same time as well, who had an impact. But yeah, bringing Jovan on made a real impact in improving us, and I think that's great to see.
I've got to say, first of all, it was a penalty, no matter what the Harrogate bench thought, because you and I sat in the St Andrews stand, and I would almost, if it wasn't for the lack of atmosphere, almost be tempted to sit there all the time, because literally being behind the dugout was absolutely fascinating. There was times in the first half where I was just watching the dugout more than I was watching what was going on. So it would be from a conversational point of view after the game, it would be a lot better to be sitting in that stand. They didn't think it was a penalty. I thought it was a penalty. What really impressed me was, I don't know whether it's confidence, I don't know whether it was arrogance, but Jovan taking that penalty, he got the ball, he was taking the penalty. That was all there was to it. There was senior players on the field, one or two, who might have felt they wanted to take a penalty. I think it was McKinnon who was with him who wanted it at the same time.
I'm not sure who he stood with, but there was a couple of them. But
somebody else
was never giving it away, was he? And stood up confidently, slotted it away really well.
Good penalty. I mean, it was hard. It was hit hard. And there's a great photo of him as he's striking it. He's looking at the goalkeeper. Now, it wasn't a no-look penalty like the England one, like the Ivan Toney. But it looked like it from the photo. It just looks like he's gone, do you know what? Have this, whack. And I think it's great that he got it and he took it, because I actually think it gives a striker confidence. He's now on the score sheet. Doesn't matter it's come from a penalty. He's got one for the season. That gets him up and running. That's why I think Tyler Walker, keep going on about it, should have taken a penalty against Blackpool last season. I really do. And I think it pays for your strikers to be able to get on the board in that manner. I thought we had some positives really late on. And look, at the end of the day, if we don't give away that stupid goal, which wasn't anything that Harrogate did, it was one individual error from one person. If you don't give that away, it's 1-1 when the penalty goes in. And at that point, they're then clinging on for a penalty shootout, and it's all over the place. So neither of us were particularly upset, I don't think, as we left the ground. It was a shame to lose. What would have been the reward? Preston North End at home. Oh, that would be awe-inspiring, wouldn't it? No disrespect. The League Cup's been really good to us, and I had a discussion with Matt, who used to sit next to me last season, about how the League Cup was crap, and then we were walking out of Bramall Lane having beaten them, and it's like, no, you're right, you've sold me on it now. But there isn't a lot of reward for it. If you're going to go out of any of the cups at the first stage, it may as well be this one, because the EFL Trophy you make money from. The FA Cup is the magic of the FA Cup. I haven't done the research, but I would love to know the last time we played a team from the division below us at home in the Cup, in one of either the League Cup and FA Cup, and actually beat them. Because I'm thinking losing to Hartlepool in the FA Cup. I'm thinking losing to Morecambe in the FA Cup. I think losing to these boys in the League Cup. We don't have a great run, do we? We either have to play the Solicitors, Bowers and Pitsea, or whatever, where we have to play that, or we play West Ham, lose 1-0, and everyone goes, oh, we played so well. But it's a Tuesday night off, isn't
it? yeah, I suppose you got to look at the positives. Tuesday night off. In the middle of a season when we might have an injury or two, we could rest a player or two. But it's frustrating. Like, we all wanted to go through, and it was frustrating that we didn't. Particularly frustrated at the second half performance, or the first half an hour of the second half performance, where we just really were not at the races at all, particularly after the positive first half. But do you think it's going to be all change on Saturday? I don't feel concerned at all about Saturday because of Tuesday. I think the team was so different, situation was so different, that we can't really read anything out of that game relating to this Saturday. It was just, in isolation, a bit frustrating.
And also it means Michael Skabala is currently 0 for 2 in cup matches. He's now lost 2 cup matches in normal time, both of them against lower league opposition. Skabala out. That's what nobody should be saying.
No, absolutely not.
Right. No. So if you are watching on YouTube, nothing's going to happen. But if you are listening in at home, you are about to get an advert. It's probably me saying something like how good Sky Television is, which, given the fact that it's been utter garbage for everybody who's been watching it, with substandard picture quality, feeds cutting out before the end of a game, and commentary dropping out, single cameras, no punditry, I'm told. Let's go to the advert. I don't know whether I ought to edit that out, given that Sky sponsor the podcast through TalkSport. I think
you know what? I don't reckon they'll listen to this.
No, probably not. Probably not. Right, we'll come back in 3, 2, 1. So that's Harrogate. The League Cup is over for another season. It will now have been 20 years since we won one at home. Incidentally, the game that we won at home was 5-1 against Crewe Alexandra, which was against the Championship team. If I could be bothered to look, I would like to find out the last time we actually beat a team in the League Cup from a division below us. In fact, it must. I'm not sure at home if we will have done, because we will have been in the basement division for nearly the whole time before that. You must nearly go back to the early 80s. I'll do that. I'll do it for somebody will be interested, I'm sure. Somebody else that is interested in Lincoln City at the moment, according to Swedish press, is Eric Ring, which is what we're going to talk about now. Now, he is a headline writer's dream. Ring, ring, City dial for reinforcements. I'm keeping that one. I don't want Chris Ray doing anything like that with his colouring in. I've got that one painted, ready to roll. So Eric Ring is... well, he's a bit of a utility man. So if you were looking on Y-Scout, you may see that he is a winger. We believe that he looks like a fullback. We're going to give this a little bit of airtime because it feels very much like the sort of transfer that we will be making. The Swedish press have said he's already been over here. Terms have been agreed with AIK. There was some hesitancy from Michael Skubala in his pre-match interview, which I've watched on Imps Plus, where he said he wasn't expecting anything before the weekend. So, if there is something happening, don't expect anything to be happening tomorrow, says Gary, as it then gets announced at 11 o'clock shortly after everybody listens to this. But it would be an interesting signing. It would fit with the profile of player that we would buy. We know if we're going to go into Scandinavia and spend money on a player, it's got to be somebody that's right. We're not going to bring in a Zach Bradshaw, for instance, who's a project player from Scandinavia. We're going to bring in somebody that can impact the first team.
Yeah, when we had the very, very interesting chat with Jez last October with the supporters board, and then that same presentation was put out to the wider supporter base later in the season. He mentioned quite a lot around the club's recruitment strategy and kind of how we kind of almost rank players. And you've kind of got those players that can come in and do a job now, not necessarily have a huge sell-on fee. You've got the players that you can bring in and develop with the potential to sell them on for a profit, which of course we've had some success at. And then you've got what he classes the A-star players, who are both. They come in and make a real impact in your first team now, and also have sell-on value. The player that really stands out in our current squad that fits that role is, of course, Ethan Irahan. He made a huge impact as soon as he came in, and automatically had a huge sell-on value as well. Now, if we're going to go across into the European market, you only have a certain number of ESC slots available in your squad. So you have to make them count. You're not going to go there and just get someone who's going to sit on the bench and be a bit part player. You're going to go and sign someone who is worthy of one of those quite specific and quite rare roles. So it would indicate to me that if this is true, it's someone who we're bringing in that will be a first team player for us, who is going to come in and play pretty much week in, week out, or at least challenge to play week in, week out. So that's exciting because it's not just a squad player, it's not just a project player. We all like those because they're often a little bit unknown. But this for me is someone, if we do sign them, it's going to come in and play a key role as a first team player, and most likely has the athletic profile to be a wing back.
Yeah, I wholly agree. Sorry, I was actually just researching their League Cup matches. It turns out that the win before Crewe in the League Cup was Derby, which was also a Championship team. So the last 2 home games that we've won in the League Cup have been Derby. I think I will pick up on what you've just said there because it is interesting. But I've just gone down a rabbit hole. I think the last time we beat a team from a division below us in the League Cup was 1981-82, and that would be when it was 2 legs and Hull City were in Division 4 and we were in Division 3, and we beat them 3-0 at the Bank, and it was a second leg and we drew 1-1 at Boothby Park. Anyway, somebody, some wag has put, ring the house on our street. We need a player called Bell. We had one called Bell End, but he came from Sunderland and now plays up in Scotland or with Eastleigh, I think, didn't he? Officially called Maguire. I think interesting. Sorry, just going off on a tangent. We are so professionally unprofessional. It is unreal. I know there'll be people who are saying we have to wait and see when these transfers are kind of or when these rumours break. But this is one of those that feels a little bit more solid. I think I almost see I'm not talking in terms of ability, but I see a Jack Burrows style player in that kind of can play on the left, can play on the right, looking at what he does. But I would expect him, if he comes here, to be playing first team football. He's been playing top flight football for AIK. Not so much this season. He was at Helsingborg last season, I think it was. Did really well for them, but they still were unable to get promotion. He kind of burst onto the scene. Micah Richards style for AIK. He was played in the Conference League for them, played loads and loads of games, and that's kind of just drifted away. I would see this as quite a coup. I think when you're signing a player who's played under 21s, not for a minnow, like, with the greatest respect, Wales, which is quite small, or Northern Ireland or something like that. Talking Sweden, I mean, this is it's a relatively big country, certainly in terms of world football. So not expecting Lasse Sorensen Mark II, because I don't think you should. It's easy to label a player who you may or may not be signing as they look like this or we want them to do that. But I've kind of done it. A Jack Burrows style figure gets up and down, hopefully like Lasse. So it will be particularly interesting.
It will be very interesting. I don't think there's a lot of similarity between either of those players other than positionally. Style-wise, he's a very dribbly boy. Averages 6.28 dribbles last season, with a really good success percentage as well, 58% successful. That is 1.5 dribbles a game more than anyone else on average in our team from last season. So that goes to show that maybe it is a slightly different profile to those that we've had. Of course, playing in a slightly different system at times. But as much as we're perceiving this to be a signing for someone who's going to come and slotting at win back, he has been incredibly versatile. So last season, he made 29 league appearances for Helsingborg in the Swedish second tier. 16 of those appearances came at left wing. 8 of them came at right wing. 4 of them came at left wing back or left back. 7 of them came at right back or right wing back. And he played up front once. I appreciate that doesn't add up to 29 because he had multiple roles in certain games. But he's played ranging from left back, left wing, right wing, and up top. And in his 6 appearances for AIK this season, he's played right wing, right back, and up front. So he's clearly very, very versatile. That can be a real benefit to a squad, of course. It can sometimes be a negative, I think, at times, because sometimes you struggle to hold down a regular spot in the team when you can fill in elsewhere. But I think with the depth in our squad now, he'll have the opportunity to nail down a position in one role, rather than having to fill in. Ali Smith, I think, fell foul of that last season, was capable of playing in multiple roles, never really got an opportunity to play in his strongest one, and now he's no longer at the club. Really, really good at getting up and down. Direct runner, seems to have good balance, shrugs off tackles quite well, quite physical. He's 6'1". That's Eric Ring.
I mean, in 22-23 season, Jack Burrows completed 5.2 dribbles per game for Coventry. So he's quite a dribbly boy. It was only really because he was playing predominantly in a Mark Kennedy side. I think that they dropped off while he was playing for us. But
Fair point.
That's by the by. He's also 6'2", so he's quite a big boy as well. Jack Burrows, another little similarity. Anyway, let's move on, shall we? We have 16 minutes of the podcast left, and I'm absolutely sure that we will be able to fill those 16 minutes with talk of Barnsley. So Barnsley haven't beaten us in this recent little run of matches that we've had. You have to go back to the EFL Cup, I think, in 2009 to find a defeat. 2 seasons ago, they didn't score against us. We won 3-0, 1-0, and then drew 0-0. Last season, there was quite a few goals. We scored 7, they scored 3, so it was a real turnaround. It's a Barnsley side who I think have had a tough start to the season. I know they progressed in the League Cup, but they struggled on the opening day. I don't think that could possibly be a better time to play them, because they may improve over the course of the next few weeks in terms of personnel. But Dad watched them against Mansfield, and he said they looked pretty miserable. They lost 2-1. XG-wise, probably deserved the win. It was a decent enough result against Wigan in midweek, a draw, but it's the League Cup. The League Cup doesn't really mean anything. Darryl Clark gone in there. Does he have what it takes to put them back in the top 6 this season? I think when we did our 1-24, they were the team that split us the most. It's a huge opening game of the season in terms of home matches, in terms of fans coming in and the kind of pomp and ceremony. Is it going to be as difficult for us as it was last season in the 2-2 draw?
No, I don't think it is. I'm really quite confident about this, I have to say. I don't think you can read too much.
Very matter of fact. Yeah. I'm really very confident about this. You sounded like Hermione. You sounded like Hermione Granger going into a herbology.
On a complete side note, I've at work today. We've been recording a video thing, and the recording lady came in and said, she said to me, "Do I spot a bit of a southern accent there, Mr. Lamming?" And I was like, I didn't think so. My missus had done my family tree back 5 generations, and I always find that sort of stuff really interesting. It was a lovely present for my birthday, and have I got a bit of Scottish blood in me, or Irish, or maybe I'm partly Maltese? Who knows? Nope, my whole family's from Lincolnshire. Always has been, always will be. So no, it turns out sometimes I just sound like that. Who knows? I've never been called Hermione Granger before. Yeah. Sorry, I've mentioned that. But I'm quite confident about this, because I agree with you in that they're unfinished. I don't think you can read a huge amount into the League Cup win on penalties, ultimately, I think. They made 5 changes, so quite a few changes, not as many as we made, but they did make substantial changes. And as you mentioned, in terms of the overall statistics against Mansfield, maybe a little bit hard done by on the surface. They had 1.26 XG compared to Mansfield's 0.65, 22 shots, 4 on target to Mansfield's 9-4, 32 touches in the box to Mansfield's 18, etc. But in the first half an hour, in which Mansfield went from 0-0 to 2-0 up, Barnsley had 4 shots, 0 on target, 0.18 XG, only had 40% of the ball, only had 5 touches in the box, only actually put together 6 attacks in half an hour. They only upped their game once they were 2-0 down, and then it's game state, because Mansfield are going to sit deeper, more compact, invite pressure, because they've got something to hold on to. So that last kind of 2/3 of the game in terms of stats, you can almost ignore, because it's game state stats. The first half an hour is really keen to look into, and they were rubbish, to be honest. Really quite poor, really slow starting. And what that indicates to me is that if we start quickly, we press really high, really aggressively, we could potentially start this game and our home league season with a bit of a bang here. Mansfield's PPDA, so that's passes allowed per defensive action, was 4.36. That's really, really low. That's really high press. That was in the first half an hour. Hugely dropped off for the rest of the game. But in that first half an hour, they were really aggressive against Barnsley, and they couldn't cope with it, quite simply. Scored a couple of low XG chances, but they got the goals. They were 2-0 up, had something to protect. So, yeah, for me, quite confident if we play to our strengths, which is high press, aggression, intensity, we can overcome Barnsley in the early stages of the game, and if we can get a goal or two early doors, I think we can hang on for the victory. And just one other point is they do have some good individuals, particularly like Luke O'Connell. I think he's a really, really good player in midfield. They have a strong midfield. I just am not convinced by their front line at all. Max Waters has never convinced me in League One, and Sam Cosgrove has not been particularly effective anywhere he's been for the last few years. Really, he's a lump. He's going to be difficult to play against. He's going to be aggressive, but yeah, I just a little bit unconvinced by them in terms of that final action. So I think we've got a really good chance if we play to our strengths. Then I think we've got a really good opportunity to start the season really, really well.
Yeah, I'm going to put the rubber stamp of death on it now. I've seen Sam Cosgrove play for several teams, and he's never particularly impressed me. Max Waters, I think, was he the boy that did really well at Crawley and got the move to Cardiff, and we were heavily linked with, and he went to MK Dons and didn't really do anything. Not going to say too much negative about him, because Cosgrove's always seemed to me to be a bit of a lump and a bit of a one that you expect to still be doing the rounds, in League One when he's 30, like a John Marquis figure, but without the goals in his past. So he's now absolutely certainly going to score in the first couple of minutes. Look, of course, it doesn't pay to get complacent. The team certainly won't be complacent. But I think if Barnsley are going to improve, and they have the ability to improve because they've got more buying power in terms of luring the better players there, probably teams in the Premier League who have earmarked players to go out on loan in the Championship and realise now they're not going to get those loans. It's the likes of Barnsley that they'll send them to, rather than Crawley, Stevenage and Northampton. So they will have the pick, let's say, of the A-star loans. So it's a great time to play them. I think we said this early doors. It's such a good time to play Burton, as we proved, because we didn't need to be as good as we kind of needed to be. And I think it's a good opportunity as well to get some points on the board. I see you smiling. I know exactly what you're smiling at there. We just had a comment coming about pina coladas. Now, from a Lincoln point of view, Barnsley are going to have to come and try and attack us, and that's going to work in our favour. So, for instance, against Harrogate, there was never any space in behind. So, Rob Street's pace was never going to be able to be utilised, which was another thing I think that set him back a little bit. Whereas, okay, he won't start, but it's more likely a player with pace will find pockets of space behind the Barnsley defence. If they come and sit deep against us, their fans are going to turn quite quickly. Turning an away end is an amazing feat. Turning a home stand is not difficult depending on the situation, but I think that they would get very frustrated if they came to defend against Lincoln City. They're one of the teams that feel perhaps they should be knocking on the door of the Championship. Not going to be too critical more of Darryl Clark, but I'm going to look at our news and say Conor McGrandles is back training. He could be part of the first team squad. I would be utterly gobsmacked if McGrandles started the game, given that he's barely had a pre-season. But then I said there was no chance of Zach Geacock starting the game on Tuesday night, and Dad was absolutely delighted when I got that one wrong. So, but I can't see McGrandles coming in, but I can see him being on the bench, and him coming back has got to be massive, because we don't really have anybody to cover Ethan Arahan. If he moves, we'll buy somebody. I get that. I understand that. But we need somebody. If he gets a knock, if he gets sent off, even if we just need to shore things up a little bit, let's say we go 3-0 up or 2-0 up, and 2-1 up rather, and they start putting the pressure on, it might be to bring another midfielder that can play that holding role to go with the double sixes. He's kind of more an advantage, or even a little bit more of a walk carrier, isn't he? He's a bit more of a workhorse. He's a bit more of an up and downer than a McKinnon and a Bayliss, who are a little bit more the artists, if you know what I mean. Bayliss and McKinnon are the Michelangelos painting the ceiling. Conor McGrandles is the guy that put the scaffolding up. They wouldn't be able to do it without McGrandles, but you don't always notice what he does.
Yeah, I agree. I think he'd be huge to get back in the squad. He can be multidisciplinary in regards to how he plays. He could play one of those more advanced eights. He obviously did a really good advanced 8 role when he played there under Michael Appleton. He's often the furthest forward at times. But I think he's a safe pair of hands as well. He's an experienced player now, reads the game well. Could replace Ethan if we need him to due to injury. But in regards to showing up a game and having him on the bench for this weekend, potentially bring him in on, playing him next to Ethan as a double six, should we go ahead. And I think that's a huge asset to be able to bring on off the bench, because we haven't got anyone else in the squad that's fit currently that can do that. So yeah, that's huge. I'd be expecting to see a very similar team that started the game against Burton, in all honesty. There's a couple of players I think that did impress. I mentioned Jack Morgan. He would have a chance, I think, of getting in there, or it's certainly been the first positive change. The benefit of the squad, of course, now is that we do have depth, which is something that Barnsley maybe haven't quite got in the front line at the moment. So yeah, I think we've got a good chance here. And you mentioned earlier, it's a good time to play them because I absolutely think they'll improve. I don't want to be I don't want this to come across as kind of complacent or cocky. I just think that we've probably got more of our summer business done at this point and have more continuity at this point than Barnsley do. And we beat them convincingly away and held them really well at home last season. And I think we've got the potential to be a better team now than we were then. So yeah, it's a big game though, and it'll be a huge statement, not just for us, but for the league as well, for us to go into the first 2 games of the season being 6 points from unavailable 6. That would be a really, really positive start. We haven't had that for a long time, I don't think. But they have got some good players. They're no mugs, Barnsley. We mentioned that they're maybe not as strong as they have been before, but they've got some really, really talented players, particularly Luke O'Connell, I think, is a really, really good player in midfield. It'll be a difficult one for us to pin down. But we've got a good old chance.
We have now Jovan. We've spoken about him already. He likes Barnsley because he scored his first Lincoln City goal against them when we beat them in the EFL Trophy. And he scored his first league goal against them when we beat them 5-1 at Oakwell. So Jovan's a big one for firsts. Can he get his first hat-trick against them since
I do.
You never know. And one thing we didn't pick up on that I would really like to, just as a finish, and he won't play, but he will almost certainly be on the bench and in the squad, Lewis Monsma. And it kind of ties in with a question that Dara's just asked, which is quite nice to finish on. So Dara, wherever that, has just asked, considering Porty's brace at the weekend, could we pose a serious aerial threat this season? So I'm going to kind of lead into that a little bit. But first of all, I mean, the cheer for Lewis against Arsenal was brilliant, and he got his goal and all that, but it was a friendly. And to see him actually come playing, not 90 minutes, but playing a good hour or so of a professional game, a proper senior game in the cup against Harrogate, I thought was particularly heartwarming. He won't see it as heartwarming. He's not a story. He's a professional with a career, and he will see it as, right, I've got minutes under my belt. I want more minutes under my belt. Looked at a couple of the 50-yard passes didn't quite go according to plan, but having him there in and around the team, Hamer's throw, Pordy's brace, aerially, just to answer Dara's question. I mean, is that something, can we maybe batter Barnsley a little bit? And if we do, is that somewhere where a Fred coming in late on helps?
It does, yeah. I don't think it's something we want to rely on. I would hate for us to become just a set piece team, that basically a Steve. I don't think we will be like a Stevenage that just plays percentages all the time, and that's kind of almost the only weapon you have to your arsenal. I think we are much better than that. I would hate that to become our identity. I don't for a second think it will, but could we increase our output from last season and be more of a threat than we were? Absolutely. Porty's equaled his goal tally in one game for his whole compared to the whole of last season. That can only be a positive. And both goals, but particularly the second, no one else was getting there ahead of him. He was absolutely getting that on the end of that second one. No one else was getting anywhere near it. I like that. Obviously, we like that. I think Tom Hamer's long throw can be a real weapon. I think that can be something that we didn't have last season. We had a short, long throw, didn't we, with Lass and last season. Whereas Tom's is a real kind of bullet in there. So that could be an added element to our attack, which is something that I think is the whole club needs to. We're aware that we wanted to improve on, but I would love us to create a lot of kind of open play XG as well as set play XG if we can.
And if you could have taken bets on the first Football League manager to be charged by the FA for comments about the referee and for not shaking an opposition manager's hand at the end of a game, I mean, it wouldn't even been worth opening a book, would it? Now Joey Barton's not here.
No, you'd have got very short odds, wouldn't you, on Steve Evans?
Wasn't it disgraceful not shaking Caldwell's hand? I mean, what's the point? Honestly, I despise that man. I think he does it. It's almost like he does it to lay down a marker. Like, there we go. It's us and them again. I've been charged again. It's Rotherham versus the world and all of that. But it's just wearing thin, isn't it? It's like, you know, the first Fast and the Furious was all right. Yeah, it served a purpose. It wasn't for me, but it was good. By the time you get to Fast and Furious 7, you know what? Move on. It's time for a new film. It's time for a new manager. It's time for a new everything. I want Rotherham to fail more than I want Birmingham to fail.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I know we mentioned on our 124 is that it'd be quite nice, it'd be quite funny to see Birmingham not have everything go their way. But despise Steve Evans, despise everything he stands for. So yeah, would love nothing more than for them to not just not get in the playoffs, but just be dreadfully shit all season. Wouldn't that be delightful?
Yeah, wouldn't it be hilarious? And I'd feel a little bit of Sean Raggett, but it would be hilarious. Right, ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, 38 to 40 of you have stuck with us on this Thursday tea time. Thank you very much for that. It goes down quite well on YouTube. We tend to get quite a few hundred people watching, and it's impacted the podcast by about 100, maybe 150. But so be it. So Lincoln City are out of the League Cup, but it isn't anything to lose too much sleep over just yet. Saturday's a huge game. Barnsley at home. Everybody's going to enjoy it. Everybody, that is, except me. I will be in a registry office in the middle of town, performing my best man duties. So, you know, yay, Dave. Remember, there's lots of road closures in Lincoln on Saturday. So if you're unsure what they are, look them up. I did get it up on one of the screens a minute ago, and now it's gone. So yeah, just be aware of that. There's a Pride March as well as the Barnsley game. The season is still very much in its infancy, but we've already got 3 points on the board. We've already got a cup exit. We've already got talking points, and we have only just gone over an hour, which is an absolute credit to Chris, who has clearly learned over the summer. So we're going to give him a C in his timing A level, but it's coursework, and we'll grade him over the course of the year. If you got your A levels, I hope you got the results you wanted. If you didn't get the results you wanted, don't fret, because me and Chris didn't get any A levels, and we're both happy as pigs in shit. Ladies, gentlemen, boys and girls, up the imps.
Up the imps.